All right, peace family. Welcome back to the channel. In this one, it's gonna be a part of a little mini series on why the United States attacked Florida and how did they acquire it. We're gonna touch on the Suwannee River, what took place there, and we're gonna also talk about Fort Negro. So at Fort Negro, it was a place where, or Negro Fort, however you want to say it was a place where blacks who were already in Florida under the Spanish went, the indigenous blacks who was in that area went, as well as people who was running away from the United States came down through the underground railroad into Florida. General Andrew Jackson was fixated on this location. General Jackson himself was deeply concerned over the presence of a Negro garrison on the Apalachicola. He warned Mauricio de Zuniga, commandant at Pensacola, on April 23rd, 1816. A Negro fort erected during our late war with Britain has been strengthened since that period and is now occupied by upwards of 250 Negroes, many of whom have been enticed away from the service of their masters, citizens of the United States, all of whom are well clothed and disciplined. Jackson added that such a condition was likely to bring trouble between peaceful nations. Failure of Spain to control the centers of a disturbance will compel us in self-defense to destroy them. So he tried to say that they had to destroy them for self-defense. Self-defense against what? These black people at the fort were basically going into these plantations, raiding them and bringing black people out. They were freedom. This was liberation. Now we have to hear about how great the United States is, and they fought the British because the British was taxing them without them having representation. All of this nonsense. But at the same time, they're invading Florida and kidnapping blacks who don't want to be a part of that system, who know the system is dirty and trying to destroy the system. So Andrew Jackson was fixated on this location. This is from General Edmund Gaines on May 14, 1815. He says certain Negroes and outlaws have taken possession of a fort on the Apalachicola River in the territory of Florida. So the Negro Fort, or the Fort Negro, it was known by these people, these generals at this time. But this is from the Savannah Journal. It was not to be expected that an establishment so pernicious to the southern states, holding out to a part of the population temptation to insubordination, so basically enticing the slaves on the plantation to leave, would have been suffered to exist after the close of the War of 1812. In the course of the last winter, several slaves from the neighborhood fled to that fort. Others have lately gone from Tennessee and Mississippi territory. How long shall this evil requiring immediate remedy be permitted to exist? So black people on these slave plantations was not evil. It wasn't an evil that he was asking how long would it be allowed to exist. It was the fact that black people were defending themselves, had a rallying point that they could go to with other black people who was looking for autonomy away from this European slave culture. So that was the evil that they couldn't tolerate, but the plantation and the kidnapping and genocide of black people and African people was something that wasn't evil. It was accepted. On April 8, 2 weeks before Jackson wrote to the Spanish governor, he ordered General Gaines to destroy Negro Fort, regardless of its location in Spanish territory. So Spain still had on Florida at this time that they attacked the Negro Fort. It wasn't a part of the United States. Yes, see, we can't look at the map like we're looking at it now in 2019, because yeah, Florida's still in the same spot, but the territory didn't belong to the United States. It was like Haiti belonged to the French before they got their freedom. Louisiana territory belonged to the French before the United States supposedly bought it when free blacks was living there. But in Spain, he attacked the territory that had absolutely nothing to do with the United States. It wasn't under United States jurisdiction, but because they saw black people there, they was like, oh no, we got to end that. But he says, I have little doubt of the fact that the fort has been established by some villains for raping and plunder, and that it ought to be blown up, regardless of the land on which it stands. If Your mind shall have formed the same conclusions, destroy it, and return the stolen Negroes and property to their rightful owners. So the black people in that fort were the property, supposedly, this is what he's saying with no proof. They have absolutely no proof that these Negroes belong to any Georgia planter, any plantation owners in the South. It's just that those were black people, and they're saying, okay, the white supremacist logic, black people are only in the Western Hemisphere because we brought them on boats. So if those Negroes are over there unaccounted for, that means they had to have ran away from these plantations. But he's saying it ought to be blown up. But after Andrew Jackson's orders to blow up this fort went through, General Gaines responded that the explosion was awful and that the scene horrible beyond description. You cannot conceive nor I describe the horrors of the scene. In the instant, lifeless bodies were stretched upon the plain, buried in sand and rubbish, or suspended from the tops of the surrounding pines. Here lay an innocent babe, there a helpless mother. On the one side, a sturdy warrior, on the other, a bleeding squaw. Piles of bodies, large heaps of sand, broken glass, accoutrements, etc., covered the site of the fort. Our first care on arriving at the scene of the destruction was to rescue and relieve the unfortunate beings who survived the explosion. So, by him saying that they was first care on the scene was rescuing them to take them to plantations. So they blew up the fort as they wanted to, killed all of these people because it's genocide. Genocide is harming a group in whole or in part, which they did. It was genocide. They didn't want black autonomy. They only wanted blacks in a slave position. Could you imagine if Florida was a free black state and these people were taking all of their guerrilla warfare training as well as their training to defend forts and build and fortify forts against the United States slave institution? They was giving them free soldiers. The more blacks that they was kidnapping from these indigenous tribes and shipping from Africa, the more and more that they was bringing over here. That was unlimited resources for those blacks in Florida without even having to go out of the way to get them. They just went to the plantations and brought them back into a new territory. They didn't want that system to operate, so they destroyed it. And now they want to tell you that they was rescuing these people, which they was taking them to be enslaved. But we're going to cover how white people felt about runaway slaves in a later video. But I just wanted to show you, when we built up the Negro Fort in Spanish territory, the United States invaded that sovereign nation to destroy those forts and to traffic blacks back across the border and put them on their plantation. So when you see this guy like Andrew Jackson and Gaines and all of these people, where are they getting their slaves from? You don't have to look no further than Florida. These people who was fighting in these wars was claiming these people as slaves. They could say they was bringing them back, but we have no proof that these black people ever belonged to anybody. But this is a Free Black Society presentation. Know about